Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, it's been said that the conference is a success once there are many more people in the audience than on the stage. And certainly, the conditions are quite barbaric, so it means that I'm restricted in where I can go because there is a marksman, a sniper working in the room, and he's shooting everyone who has not muted the smartphones. Okay, dear friends, let us begin. I would like to speak about the cybersecurity culture. But to make that clear and understandable, my expectations from the culture is not about awareness, about the informed employees, but let me say how, with the help of culture, the cybersecurity could be escalated over to business. We have to admit that information security remains for business is a liability rather than an asset, because they have to do that, but they do not know why. Has any of you thought about how business imagines or perceive cybersecurity or information security? Any synonym? Yes, this is a sect. Sectarians. Some unknown people who are sitting in front of the computers and saying some unclear formulas. They do not guarantee anything 100%, and they want money. So these are the sectarians. This is a sect. My name is Oleg Sidov. I'm a director for cybersecurity development for the people from solar company by. I am a reporter by background. I've become a reporter long before. I'm an illustrative example of the fact that you have to live your life the way that a diagnosis is named after you. So journalism, this is my diagnosis. And diagnosis. So let us set a couple of rules. The rule number one, we have no rules. That's why in the room we have people with long legs, with fast reaction. Anytime you can raise a question, you can identify your point of view. I don't want to show off as a smart aleck, but I want to be heard, listened to, and I want to get you hooked. So these are only two rules. And you can abuse your rights, by the way. So the position of a journalist is very convenient. So I am an expert on cybersecurity among journalists and a journalist among cybersecurity experts. So it means that I can go to and fro, but at least I will try to be interesting for you. I like that statement very much, that in business, just like in mountaineering, you cannot actually go to climb a series summits alone. And very often, climbing a summit, there is no one you can hug. The same true for business. Not everyone managed, not everyone could, not everyone met your expectations. And cybersecurity and information security is among those questions. For quite a while, as a reporter, I asked a question to myself. What are the stages of evolution of an information security specialist? Among doctors, it is all clear. First grade student, for instance, knows all the bones, and for the second year, he may be allowed for the muscles, then the nerve system, then the postgraduate courses, etc. Even the plumbers have certain ranking. Cybersecurity. That's a total zoo. Different disciplines, different specialties, and they all surprised us with their performance, although it was totally unexpected. And I failed to find anything. And I failed to answer that question, how it all happens and why. But the answer is quite simple. The colleagues from London Bureau of Pricewaterhouse said. So the maturity level of cybersecurity specialists is defined, in essence, by three questions. First question is what I'm doing. What I'm doing. That's the level of BA student, college graduate. So, for instance, he is positioned in the first line of the support, and that's it. And the second level, how I'm doing that, the solution of compatibility of solutions, etc. But there is also the third level. And not always you can get from the first or the second level, too. Why I'm doing that? This is the business level. And here we have a lot of problems, a lot of challenges. What do you think? What motivates business to pay attention to information security? There are three motivators, three drivers, if I figure something, correct me. First of all, selling the fears. We are knowledgeable of selling the fears. Every morning, the PhD stage begins with selling the fears, and some speakers are so good that there might be people with brackets in that room and they would be afraid of smiling during the thunderbolts. But there is one problem. You are getting used to the fears. And you remember 2022. And cybersecurity has become a hot potato. That was the golden age of cybersecurity. And then the pendant went the other way around. So probably this is about Russia, because we're a little country. And we sing songs, actually, when we go on war, and we are crying when we are getting married. We missed that time. And once again, we have to prove to the business why we are needed for the business. But it's the second driver, and that we cannot forget. That's about regulations. The industry is totally over-regulated. I cannot say whether this is right or wrong. No, this is just a fact. It has to be like that. But no regulator has come up with a magic pill so that their initiatives do not slide into the hard copy security. Hard copy security reminds me of the rain dance. Probably you're familiar with National Geographic, BBC channel, and for instance, they arrive to some deep Africa and shoot some wizard who is beating the drums, would be shouting and dancing, and this is called the rain dance. And the drum is loud, and the dancer is good, but the problem is only one. Which one? It has nothing to do with the rain. And the same is true for the security, cybersecurity. So what remains on paper is nothing to do with the cybersecurity. What can be worse than the cybersecurity that remains on paper? Just an imitation of cybersecurity. And even worse, that would be a poor cybersecurity or poor imitation. There might be actually poor imitations of cybersecurity. And for instance, you have to undergo the search, but you can have 2 guns under your coat and no one would check that. But that's an imitation, that's a simulation. And the business has to see some need in cybersecurity, because we're forgetting about the third motivator. These are the opportunities for the business interests. And this is where we would like to be, not a liability, but rather an asset. How we can do that? When we are educating school students, any attempts to get the business interested in cybersecurity, information security, that's a failure. When we say let business speak about cybersecurity, they immediately become bored and would put the finger at the cybersecurity guys and information security guys that they pay money to. How can we track their attention? How you assess your own private cybersecurity? And again, they try to find the IT guys, then they realize, but now this is the wrong guy. There are friends, family members, wives, and the friends of the wives who may undermine your private cybersecurity, and they got interested in that. And another thing, when you say that cybersecurity, that's the science about the future, do you agree with that? We have a lot of to confirm that we are living proactively. But first, we are being attacked, and then we are on the defensive. We remind you the generals who make maneuvers in order to fight the previous war. Cybersecurity, this is the science about the future. Business, this is about the opportunities of the future. This is about the risks, the opportunities. But one nuance, don't try tell the business that cybersecurity may earn you money, because this would get you nowhere. You immediately would be trapped by your own initiatives, and the business would keep your eyes how to earn money. Now, cybersecurity is not about making money. This is about for providing opportunities to make money. These are things different. We were speaking about the corporate security foundation. Any corporate culture consists of different things: efficiency, reputation, ethics, culture. Do you know what is in common? It's all been digitalized. It is digital. We are so much digitalized that very often we would come to the mirror and the mirror would say, there is a digital dust on the air that would tell you it's time to have a rest, where, for instance, you have to make a different lipstick. Because once you call anyone and you say where you are, And in response, you say, it takes me 15 minutes to get to you, so the people do not understand where they are. Because they're using navigators, they're dependent on those gadgets. We're all digitalized. But there is one nuance about the culture. For instance, this is what is called the kill the joy definition of culture, what it is. What culture is about. We don't know what culture is about, so a cultural person of culture. Should he say hello when entering the room? You can say, good afternoon, glad to see you. And when, for instance, some strange person arrives and uses the jail jargon, actually, how would you respond to him? So you do not know how it would look like. Culture is a very different thing. But there are some replicas of corporate culture that I would not name. We are not good in terms, for instance. AR as an artificial intelligence is translated Russian that way, but actually it has a little different definition because it imitates the reality and the awareness. This is just not about informed, but about being conscious why this cannot be done. Password 8 symbols is too few, but they still do that, believing that probably they would get off cheaply. DevSecOps, this is an imitation of culture, because there's two definitions which are being portrayed as a cybersecurity culture. Leave the cybersecurity at the level of the IT and security of information, and we do not upscale that to business. But we have to be conscious of the investments that are made into that. I got about 250 different definitions of corporate culture. This is regular, by the way. I know why. Once I got prepared to moderate Forbes Club discussion, and they were about to speak about the digital economy, and I looked for a definition of digital economy and found a resource with more than 10,000 definitions of corporate or digital economy. And I started reading who invented so many definitions and realized one thing: these are the marketing specialists, and marketing specialists next to those who jump up to take their luggage aboard of the aircrafts upon the landing. They're next in the queue to the boilers in the hell. Well, and usually they would start with one simple phrase: you cannot imagine digital economy without our product. That's a nice approach of marketing specialists. Then they would improvise. The same is true for the corporate culture. It has different definitions, such as leadership system, resolution of conflicts, etc. But before we speak about the culture, it would be good to pay attention to one thing. Why we have to speak about culture in terms of how culture impacts the economy, and that would require some proof. So there are some obvious things. If it is as obvious as that, then probably would not be speaking about that. And we would be pocketed by the business, and we would be having tea along with business every morning, speaking about their opportunities, but risks and other things impact such things as inherited trust. I will speak about trust very often now, because I believe we have to end up with the economy of trust. In Great Britain, the GDP could have been 8.7% higher, but in Russia it could be 64% more. This is just because trust as a result of culture. Then the U-turn in the taste occurred in 1993, when a historian was awarded the Economics Nobel Prize, who proved that the plantation slavery was actually not so inefficient. Besides, the Negroes, the slaves on the South, lived better than in the North, because they were provided with food, with footwear, etc. In the North, they had to do that on their own, but they gave up slavery. Why? Because of the change in the system of values. President Lincoln met Gabriel Beecherstone, who wrote the Uncle Tom's Cabin, and said, here you are, that little lady, because of who a war was waged. What about Russia? Do you remember what was in Russia culturally before the abolition of the serfdom? It was abolished 100 years ago in 1861. Turgenev published his Mumu novel, and it was a little bomb, and we're fed up from the books that we're supposed to read at school, and that certainly impacts our consciousness, our culture, impacts economy, but what way? It doesn't appear from nowhere, out of the blue. So you have to bring up culture if actually you do not teach your children to wipe their ass once they defecate, they would be very poor people. So when Moses was touring the Jews for 40 years in the desert because the culture was different, I have a question. Do you know who this gentleman is? Why? How you recognize him as Moses? You are familiar with him. Okay, you know him. Okay, you actually killed, you have stolen my thunder. And that's the mistake of the translation. Jeremiah of Styridon made a mistake translating the original. He said that descending from the Sinai Mount, he translated that as his face was horned, and instead of the leather of the skin of his face was shining. And now, actually, Michelangelo commemorated that, and now he wears the horns. This is like a Neptune, but the horns spill the beans. What it has to do with us? So the culture has memory. The culture has memory, and it is very resilient. So the Moses toured the Jews for 40 years. The 14th century, Italy. I read the COVID diaries, and we forget what happened to us several years ago. And the COVID diaries in Venice, and Venice remembered very well the 14th century when the plague started with Venice. So the lockdown proceeded from Curato, 40 days. The ships had to stay next to the shore to make sure that there is no one contracting plague. And the skull and the bones was a symbol of plague, not of piracy. Then it changed its meaning. But then, in those moot Middle Age years, the people said that these are the Jews to be blamed for everything. Well, certainly these are the Jews. But other cities would say, no, Jews have nothing to do for that. This is because we're sinners, etc., etc. So 600 years lapsed. Fascism in Italy, Mussolini is ruling, and every city where there were Jews to be blamed for everything, they will be put to the gas chambers, and where the Jews were defended, they would be covered. There is a QWERTY effect. You know very well what it is. QWERTY, this is your keyboard. Why it looks like that? I know about 5 to 7 versions why it is like that. Why this happened, that it is like that. Any attempts to give it up resulted in nothing, so we got back to QWERTY keyboard. There was a hipster's humped one. Keyboard when actually you would be pushing the keys sitting or reclining on the chair. But no, we got back to that keyboard. But it provided an economic effect. The economists interpret that the following way. QWERTY, that's a mistake that consciously was done to the system at early stages and which has become a standard and cannot fix it. Can you remember the QWERTY effect that we know very well? For instance, the rail, the gauge between the rails, ours is 13 centimeters wider, and therefore we can actually provide for more speed, but it cannot change the whole infrastructure. That's the cultural feature. What QWERTY effect we embed into our cybersecurity infrastructure is the one that we'll never be able to give up. That's a question. I don't know how to answer that question. Trust. I promised to speak about trust. There are two news, good news and bad news. Do you remember that boring book, Adam Smith's Economy or Economics? That's a very boring one. And it was very difficult to somehow pick up a girl using quotes from that book, but we read that to the very end. And it doesn't work for Moscow. Do you remember the formula that the demand defines the supply, or vice versa? What was the demand for such gadgets, for instance? There was no demand. And there was no demand for cell phones, tablets. Now, these were the smart guys, the pundits who invented something. They set an agreement with the marketing engineers, and they provided a way to put that in your pockets, and we can not live without them. What about high-speed internet? Because we do not need that. It was just offered to you, and you tried that, and you said, oh, how we could live without that. And we cannot, for instance, remember the days when we had just 2 copies in our pocket and promised our mother to call her. But now we have smartphones in our pockets, and we cannot imagine how we can survive without them. And you know that children are being left in the cars in the parking lot much faster than, much more frequent than people would leave their smartphones. And we have a lot of terms, and digital economy term was distorted with that political dressing, but in essence, digital economy term emerged for the first time in the European economic circles. In 1970s, it was implied that this is how you cut your transactional costs. And Uberization is an example of such an economy. And what about Yandex? And that's pity that a colleague has gone, and he said that Yandex was totally different before the taxi drivers entered it. And that's really true. There is no arguing about that. But nevertheless, digital economy, that's about improving the efficiency between you and the car driver, taxi driver. There is now taxi aggregator. You don't have to flag a car. So is it quick? Yes, it is quick. Is it convenient? Yes. And certainly there are new risks, but it is very efficient because this is the improvement of the efficiency. Certainly the space cannot be Uberized, but probably, or for instance, the atomic industry cannot be Uberized. But this is about improving the efficiency. But the economic efficiency is impacted by the data. You all are familiar with the fact that actually the data comprises of trust and other things, but it has to be also complemented by the relevance, the ampleness, because, for instance, once your data is integral, confidential, if actually the feedback is kept only positive and the negative feedback is removed, or if the data is outdated, the ex-IT director of Bank of Russia, Mr. Sinatov, once said a story. He used to be an officer who did surveillance for the U-boats, and they had to purge that noise from the noise made by dolphins and others. And in 15 minutes, it's all changed, for instance. On the internet, that's the same. You are using the search engines, and the first advertisement you remove, and unreliable events you remove, and you take what you need, and you look at the relevance of the data when this or that piece of news was published. So this is how you have to work with the data. There is one question that I've always asked, and only now I can provide an answer. It proceeded from my communication to IT directors, and he said, who is responsible for inputting the data into the system? So these are some operationists. So who is responsible for storing the data? We also know these are the IT guys and the database. Who is responsible for the decision-making and using those data? But who is responsible for the reliability of the data in the company? And that was the question until today. This is the information security officer, and this is the one who can check the and verify the reliability of the data and their relevance. There are certain tools, but we use them, but we are ignorant. We are very much ignorant. We do not know what the global economy and global culture offers to us, for instance. Back in 2001, the Economics Nobel Prize was awarded to George Akerlof for lemon market model. So it is a very challenging name. I don't think that any salesperson from the farmer's market can write such a book. He knows how to sell lemons. But now, lemons, in their slang, would be the poor used cars, and the good ones would be called the plums. And if you ever dealt with the second-hand cars, there are two things that would be interesting for those who are buying that. So the way it looks and the price. So that market model results in the fact that the winner is the most poor quality product. The competition, as the capitalist model, is put on the back burner. Some schemes are being used, bribes are being used, and the reason behind that lies not in the fact that the people are behaving like that, because people are human. And he called that the data asymmetry. The seller knows more information, reliable data about the product than the buyer. And you probably found yourself in such a situation, how you're buying the products once you come to a shop. You are using the tags, what is written there, the shelf life, for instance, but is there any guarantee that what you see is really true? And can you imagine that this is true for some civil service? Bureaucrat is supposed to make our life better, but what the well-being of a bureaucrat depends on. If he is praised by the boss, do you find the quality of our life there? That's the data asymmetry, what we know about our life, what the bureaucrat reports to the boss, and the decision taken by the boss. These are the three things different. And we get back to the asymmetry of data, reliability of the data and checking of the code, because the fake news was not invented in the 21st century. And the old Chinese emperors also disseminated fake news, because in our pocket now we have the whole factory of fake news. We can proliferate that and generate that ourselves. According to the focus, in 2025, we will run out of data that were used in order to train our chatbots. And so it means that the chatbots would train themselves, proceeding from the information that generated on their own. And then there will be a war between the free chatbots and the paid ones. So the paid ones believed to be more reliable, but is there any guarantee that information that we get proceeding from big data, proceeding from other things? Well, actually, you don't have to store big data. You'd rather buy big data from the big data exchange if we need that. But who told you that those data would be reliable? Who is responsible for the reliability of the data? And that would be the guy from the information security department. So culture, that's the aggregate of a set of behavioral patterns acquired by an organization through adaptation of the external environment and internal integration. And I do think that you encountered different manifestations of corporate culture. Do we have any students here? So best regards to Miria. In what corporate culture would you like to work? The one on the right-hand side or the left-hand side? When you actually are marching in certain ranks, and certainly everyone would like the right-hand side. And then a provocative question. Usually that part is somewhere there in the bottom, but the maturity model says that everyone wants to work where there is a stability, where there is aristocracy, and most likely you will have to stick to the dress code, etc. Where the culture is, how you work, because culture has three levels of maturity, so the culture does not appear from nowhere. At the first level, and you know all those things. These are about prohibitions and restrictions and oppressions. During Peter the Great, for instance, the population of Lithuania was more than the population of Russia, and then potato was brought to Russia. And well, actually, in Lithuania, it was either or. If you want, you could buy that, or you should not buy that. But Peter the Great made all the people mandatory to eat potato, and as a result, a democratic boom occurred. So we know what oppressions are about. But there is the second level of culture that we have to move to, and not everyone does that. This is conscious behavior of the members of the elite club. When your employees, when your staff members value the membership in some elite club, where they are because of that information security. For instance, they can work from home, and due to the cyber culture, they can get access to data from somewhere there, and they can work from abroad, from home. This is the advantage. This is something that they value. And they lose the authority status, etc. otherwise. And number three, this is when it is done at the level of the business, and this is our main goal, when cybersecurity becomes a competitive edge for the business, because everyone understands its value. Then SLA would sell that as an extra competitive edge, and the data would not be leaked because they are either insured or protected. So in case the data is leaked, you would get an insurance.
Of course, business understands it. It's an opportunity for business. But then there are cases that we can talk about for a long time. They're in shortage. Many of them are made up. But how can you build a culture? What is culture in our understanding? Here are two examples of culture. We're not going to be riding into a fence in our car, right? Because we want our security to be there. The fence is a line. It's the same as this line, but nobody will cross a fence, but people do cross the lines. You will maybe go very fast, you may be speeding, but you never hit the wall. Why is that? The principles of habit generation. First, clear requirements, policies, regulations, instructions, etc. Independent control. Well, it's we have a lot of laws. Our crazy deputies have come up with a lot of laws. They are harmless until the point when they start enforcing them. When they enforce the laws, we realize that they cannot control them, but they just want it to be this way. It's wishful thinking. So they just choose whom they want to enforce these laws upon. And definitely there should be feedback why it shouldn't be done this way, so there shouldn't be repressions right away. On the second level, it's dialogue, but where dialogue ends and repression start, it's a huge question. However, in cybersecurity, there are a lot of people who end things on repressions. They believe that dialogue with the regulator is simple. Where are our carrots? And you see that when you get carrots from a regulator, then in some time you will get a stick. It's just delayed. It's a necessary schema. Where does this schema come from? From adjacent knowledge, I guess. All the cybersecurity is about change management, but there is no security manager on MBA on this course of change management. But information security people actually must be aware of change management. Only three principles work together. They cannot work one after another. First rule, then control, then feedback, and then you adjust the rules to that. What if rules do not work? And it's important. Why would we need any articles in the code if they don't work? We eliminate them from the code and we replace them with the others. The one who lobbies them will prove them. But why would he do that? Despite the fact that they don't work? It's a different question, as we say. But no, it's the same question, actually. It's a big mistake to assume that you should start cybersecurity from control. We know how to do that. We control, we enforce, we scare people. But there is a joke that we all will go to heaven in case if we have time to clean our log files. But it's a big mistake. What should we start with? What should we start cybersecurity with? No, from your friendship with CEO and leadership. But cybersecurity managers don't have their rights. They cannot introduce rules themselves. You need to lobby it, and in order to lobby it, leadership needs to control it, need to support it. They should be on board. Somebody, HR maybe, should introduce it, and it will require budget. It will require going beyond information security. These rules must be legalized, because simply introducing DLP system, it doesn't mean that it's legal and people will follow it. Even if people sign it, or maybe they can actually reject it according to the Constitution, they can. Any employee can fight for their constitutional rights, and they will win in court in case if they wish so. The next slide will be an intrigue. But, well, yeah. Next important point. National peculiarities. We are in Russia. Things are different here. Russia is very diverse. According to Natalia Zubarevich, a teacher in Moscow State University, there are 4 types of Russia. With one part of Russia, you can negotiate and come to terms, but with the 3 other types of Russia, you cannot negotiate and cannot come to terms. There is a lot of individualities. Moscow is individual. We were in Moscow. We're listening to me. I'm interested to you. But in other regions, people will ask me first, "Are you familiar with that guy? Are you familiar with that guy? Have you been to prison? Who was next door from you when you were in prison?" So it will be important for them. Next, broken windows principle. Do you know what's that? There was New York of 1980. Was a terrible metro, dirty streets, and in case if somebody is breaking windows, you need to replace the window immediately. I'm sure that you have seen old cars in the yard, and in case if tires are flat, then they stay flat, and in this case, then somebody will steal something from this car, break the windows from this car, and in case if this car would have, the owner of this car would just inflate the tires, then it wouldn't have happened. It's psychologically easy to break the second window if the first one has already been broken before you. The same way here, we should not create a precedent. We should escalate it right away. We should not allow anyone to break the culture, and this is the broken windows principle in Russia. Once somebody throws some garbage somewhere in the street, then in 1 week you can see a pile of garbage on this place. It's not. I'm not a journalist who doesn't like his motherland. No, garbage cannot be towed. The waste management car just cannot get to this waste. This is why they cannot collect this garbage, simply because they cannot make their way there, and it should be escalated in case if it happens this way. Is it difficult to escalate everything from the first attempt? Right, it is. Especially when the first exceptions come from the management of the car. There's a cost, bring in all device. And when everybody brings their gadgets and they're using their own gadget, and it's great, business saves money, and then you should introduce the code or the rules how to use personal devices. For certain models of gadgets, the approach will be different. And then cybersecurity is in hell. It was the first day after Christmas holidays. Those rules who forget the rules, they bring in the gadgets that are prohibited. And who's the first doing that? General manager. And this is when we remember an old joke. First, the chairman violates the rule, then the whole village will violate the rules. So it starts from leadership. First, the C1 manager, then the further managers, then secretaries, and then everyone else. So control matters, really. If you focus attention on control, then the financial cost for control will be enormous. On the one hand, attitude to people people attitude to the rules will be this way. At the start, people are absolutely law-abiding, like 10% will be absolutely law-abiding, and 10% will be absolutely not law-abiding. The first ones love you by default. You should get rid of the second one, but there are 80% who are able to get adjusted to your policies. These 80% include such an option as insiders. We're back to this topic. There was a time when we got tired of this, but now we're back to it. But now the time exerts a lot of pressure. An insider is a company who is misbehaving in the company, does something bad. But the thing is that this guy actually is not supposed to show up in the company in the first place. HR should not let him in. Information security system should not let him in. When you talk to him, you realize he's wrong. But the thing is that people change because of internal or external reasons. Internal, for instance, you were deprived of your bonus, or somebody swore at you, or you got reprimanded, or you did not get promoted. External reasons. When somebody gets sick, or you get a mortgage, or you have a girlfriend and she requests a lot of money. But now is the time when people are under both external and internal pressure. And this political attitude really changes behavior of people. So you have to monitor their behavior. But in case if you spend all the money for monitoring, then when are you going to do? When you're going to do cybersecurity? We don't have time for that. Cybersecurity is about future. How can you look forward in the future, but not at now? Then life makes us switch to the next level. The next level is when we put together cyber elite. First, you become an information security partner for your colleagues, which means that you help them behave right and you help them switch to this level and admit them to this elite club. At some point, when your cost for monitoring grows dramatically and risks are going down, then you can pay some money to them for this, a little bit. In case if people are in the green, they get X small amount of money. In case if he's doubtful somewhere in the yellow area, then you don't pay anything. And in case if he's in the red, then you deduct money from him. In case if you click a phishing link, for instance, you're in the red. What's the risk of phishing link? The risk is not that people will click on it. The risk of the phishing link is that none of them will report to cybersecurity that there is a suspicious link, so that cybersecurity would be aware of this. We had a case when anti-phishing system was introduced to our company. The most risky department in the company is accountancy. In accountancy, they had 30 elderly ladies. They took tests and they passed these tests, and they got bonuses for this test. Cybersecurity tests passed. After that, the company told us, in case if these accountants are so clever, then why should we buy some methods or some tools that prevent tuition? So we convinced them somehow to send a phishing email to the company, and in case if 10 accountancy employees will respond to it out of 30, then you buy this. How many responded to it? How many clicked the link? 20? 25? 30? 30. Everyone. Even more. 700 people clicked the phishing link. It was an empty website, actually. It was just a counter. It was calculating how many people clicked it. The email said, esteemed employee of the company, leadership of the company is very happy with your work, and on the 8th of March, you will get a discount in an online store, 30%. 29 accountants click this link, and they reach out to their chief accountant, and they're saying that our IT guys prohibited this to us, our leadership gave us a gift, and we cannot even use this link. And the accountant escalates it to all IT. IT guys get this email. All the general managers are copied on this email. They all get furious, and all IT guys made sure that it actually doesn't work. But accountants stay vigilant, and they reach out to their friends and relatives, and they send this phishing link to their friends. Then there were 700 clicks on this link, and then we said, enough, let's disconnect this. How can you monitor this after this? There was not even one employee who would say that you should not click it. This person should have been paid a bonus. This way you reduce monitoring costs, and you become cyber partners, and they switch to cyber partner role for you. You have support on both ends. This is the second level. After this, you can switch to the third level. When you have business information security partners, when business understands that it's important and business reaches out to you first. Regulations will not work here. Retail is a great example. Never explain marketing to the one who was selling toothpaste in retail. Some copics or some decimal numbers are a great asset in the retail market. They know how to supply goods, and they use some competitive advantages to interact with their partners. And now you know that there are a lot of attacks on supply chains, and IT companies are at risk. Why IT companies exactly? Because they don't know that they're actually IT companies. COVID made us totally digital, and many people went online. Businesses went online, but they did not introduce cybersecurity. Their level of cybersecurity mindset is zero, but they are partnering with us. This is why partners in retail understand this, but who are excluded from this group? Who are not in this group? We forgot about IT people. IT people are at risk because you cannot start working with IT. You cannot approach IT from the first stage. IT believes that they are very knowledgeable about business information security. Who are in the risk group of the criminals, cyber criminals? Yes, children and elderly people. Yes, but ranking number 3. The third people at risk are mothers with little children staying at home. And in case if somebody makes a phone call and they show some interest and they are fishing for some money from them. And the first people at risk are the ones who believe that this will never happen to them. They are at risk in terms of information security. There's a well-known jazz singer in Russia. She thought that she's almost divine person, but actually a criminal did hack her. They have high expectations, and they get abused. So IT guys are at risk, and business is also at risk. Business that believes that they can do a lot of things and nothing is going to threat them. Cybersecurity of C1 leaders is a very special thing, and it should be a separate track in information security. I would not try to hack a state deputy because they're super protected. In our genre, there's a topic that should not be spoken about. Our communication should not be a hacker's masterclass. I would not try to hack state deputies because they're supported by information security departments of the state. But I would approach actually their girlfriends, their lovers, and their friends. The question is off the mic. Yeah, why not? Thank you very much. I guess that's all that I have, and now I'm ready to take your questions. Yes, please. Please introduce yourself. Hello, my name is Yekaterina. My question is as follows. Could you explain, is it possible to explain to business that business security is necessary through financial benefit? So, explaining it in terms that things that they will not lose or how much it will cost them to have it. It's a poor conversation when you're starting with you will lose it in case if, but what if it doesn't happen and you will not lose it? There have been a case when they kept on selling information security and they found a vulnerability in the app, so let's drop sales. So they reached out to CEO and they said, let's sell. And then no risks manifested themselves. But what did information security do when they escalated these risks of business? Nobody would listen to them anymore. In case of information security comes to manager and talks about any vulnerabilities and they do not manifest themselves, then information security will never be trusted again. So you should. I think the right question would be different. The right way to convince business is different. One tactless question. Are there any representatives of Russian railways in the audience? What company do you work for? Okay. We'll keep you in mind. Let me say, I wouldn't like to offend anyone. After this phrase, I can offend anyone, actually. I can take any attempt. How much did Twix cost in Russian Railways buffet in 10 years ago? What was the price? 30 rubles, 50 rubles. Those who are true, you can take camera from that cameraman. 350 rubles. 450. The right answer is mine, 0. They were not on sale, simply because when the after incident with Twix, sales of Twix was prohibited in Russian Railways buffet or canteen. When you say reputation risks of Russian railway company, what is the unnecessary word? One unnecessary word, but reputational risks are typical of an official who works with Russian railway company. In case if We're being recorded here. We are going to have troubles. All discounts to with Russian railway company will be zeroed. So in case if there's an incident, then monitoring people and incident experts will reach out to the company and see where's the problem. In case if this incident impacts reputation of the company, then they will understand your arguments. So it's reputation. Okay, but there's another question about reputation. What? Whose reputation? Information security or business? Business reputation. Last year, a lot of businesses had their data leaked, and these businesses continue work, and their reputation suffered, but it suffered for a month only. After these data leakages, there were a lot of statements that we will leave your bank unless, in case if our data will be leaked. But there is the next slide. How many people actually left the bank after this statement? But nobody left the bank. Why? Why? You go to another bank and the same can happen. Welcome. Sure. Question of the mic.
Прекрасно. Да. Да как это?
Great.
Право на забвение в действии. Да. Именно так. То есть вот
Exactly.
все-таки рыночная я верю в
So
капитализм.
I believe in capitalism. Capitalism does miracles when it's the true one, when it's about lemons. Not the lemons that degrade the market, but the lemons that make the market better.
Да, ну мне на да. Слушайте, ну
I see this stop word. In case if organizers push us from the stage, we cannot do anything about this, but I'm here available. Please approach and talk to me. I'm here at the sidelines. We have 5 more minutes or seconds? Minutes or seconds?
в каком смысле? Человек говорит как официант. Мы хотим, можно еще повторить.
You're talking like a waiter.
Повторять будете? Да. Друзья мои,
Would you like to replenish? I would like to, yes, sure. Good afternoon. Could you clarify why do you believe that responsibility for information credibility is with information security, but not with process owners or document owners, those who are the source or the author of this document? Why is information security responsible for trustworthiness of the documents? 1946, a long telegram of Ken. It's available in public. It was Ken for a long time was ambassador of the U.S. in Russia. He is in elite among 100 names in diplomacy, and he understood the mentality in Russia very well. He prevented the clash between the West and the East. Then there was a speech by Churchill, and in that telegram he explained
Советским Союзом.
why such certain actions should not be done to the Soviet Union. He said, you will never learn
Заносят ту или иную информацию.
why leaders have this or that information, who brings this information to them. The model that you have described, the CEO will receive information in a corporate format, and he will only receive the information that he wants to see, based on his KPIs, based on the budget numbers, based on bonuses or something else. I'm sure if you have been in a corporate environment, you know that. Who checks the trustworthiness of the data, whether they can be trusted? Is it information owner?
Аудитор проверяет.
Auditor just checks the boxes. That's it. However, audit practice is very much lagging behind now. You can see it by judging by the quality of IT projects. 50% are failing. They're recognized failing for 3 reasons. The signs of a successful project is timeline, budget, and functionality and features available. In case if 2 of them are not available, then it's a failure. We don't have those auditors who would really be auditing seriously the project. So, we had a round table some time ago about this, and I heard a point of view. It sounded very convincing. Information owner is not always objective about information. He's trying to paint a picture of the world in his way, the way he sees life. But you need someone independent, the one who checks trustworthiness, who does fake checks or fact check. I don't want to say it from stage, but I can give you real-life examples later off the mic. There was someone else willing to ask a question. I'm sorry, I will be available to you over here. I'm not in hiding yet. Thank you all.